Thank you all for joining us for the panel on quantum technologies and the future of drug discovery, a really exciting area to be talking about. My name is Shannon Anderson. I'm on the business development team here at Yale Ventures, and I'm pleased to introduce Mark Jackson, who will be moderating this panel. He's a quantum evangelist at Quantinuum, and I'll let him take it from here.
Thank you so much. Come in. So thank you all so much for being here. It wasn't that long ago that people were saying that quantum computing is 10 years away and always will be. And so now here we are today at the Innovation Summit, where we not just have one quantum panel, but we have two. And so you've just seen the warm-up act, and now it's time for the real show. And so we are thrilled to be having four of the most important people in quantum Connecticut with us right here. So I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get down to why we're here. I first wanted to give some context. What does drug discovery have to do with quantum computing is a question that you might be asking. And it's because, as you'll soon learn, chemistry was one of the first applications given for quantum computing. It's very difficult for a normal computer to do any sort of chemical molecular simulations. And of course, this is a crucial component of drug development. And so these people here will be explaining how quantum computing is going to be used in the very near future, much sooner than many of you might suspect, to do drug discovery. And so with that, I will let them introduce themselves.
I'm Victor Batista from the chemistry department. I've been collaborating extensively with Quantinuum, Pfizer, Nvidia, and BI on the use of both high-performance computing and quantum computing for drug design and the characterization of reaction mechanisms for discovery of new drugs and new ways of making chemicals. Addressing the issue of the low-hanging fruits on quantum for a wide range of applications, what you have to think about is that those departments that are already making heavy use of high-performance computing are going to be the first beneficiaries of quantum, in the same way as they have been the first beneficiaries of GPUs. So everything that happened with AI happened because of the emergence of GPUs. Without GPUs, we wouldn't see anything of what we are seeing it. And it's behind the scenes because the computer still looks very much like the original computer without GPUs. But what we're going to be seeing with quantum coprocessors is something like what it happened with GPUs, but at a much larger scale.
Great. Yeah, so I'm Matt Martin. I'm at Pfizer here in Groton, Connecticut, and so it's great to be part of the local ecosystem. I've been at Pfizer for 8 years, and I lead a group of computational scientists in the drug safety research and development organization, but also sort of crossing all the comp bio and comp chemistry capabilities in the R&D space. So we focus on computational biology use cases for, basically compute from CPU through to GPU, and are kind of in the early stages of identifying those use cases where the quantum space might come into play. Chemistry, obviously one, but we also are always looking for sort of ways of doing things faster and more efficiently. So things like clinical trial site selection, scheduling capabilities, things like that may also be places where quantum could play a role. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mark, for the invitation to come back to Yale. It's really nice to be here again. And my name is Elica Kyoseva. I'm Director of Quantum Algorithm Engineering at Nvidia. I lead a team of engineers that work on applications and algorithms that are, of course, in quantum computing across all of the verticals. My background is, in fact, in quantum computing, quantum algorithms, and I also used to work in a pharma company in the quantum computing team in the past, actually in BI. So drug discovery and health applications is my favorite vertical for quantum algorithms, and we have a lot of collaborations in that area with leading scientists, including Victor, a very successful collaboration with his team over the last year. NVIDIA is very much engaged in the quantum computing space. I can tell more later about that. But our goal is really not to make the best quantum computer. There are many companies that are doing that expertly. Quantinuum is, of course, one of them. But what we are very much working towards building is the accelerated quantum supercomputer. And like Victor mentioned, that GPUs and are an accelerator to a high-performance computer. In the same way, QPUs will be accelerators to an HPC system that will have GPUs, CPUs, and QPUs. So it will be all of these three technologies working in tandem, and Nvidia is very much focused on the scale of that system, on the performance, and also on enabling quantum computing, solving the challenges of quantum computing.
Now the man who needs no introduction.
So I'm Albert Green. I'm the CEO of Quantum CT. I was here on the last panel, so I won't bother going through my intro again, except to say that I want to be a quantum evangelist. like Mark. I'm delighted to be, Quantum CT is delighted to be a part of this and to really have collaborations with everyone up here. And then the other thing I would just say is that I think it's a great topic because what the kind of things that you can do in quantum computing, particularly around advanced materials and advanced material design and simulation, this is a specific vertical around drug discovery, around a really broad horizontal, which is what quantum computing can do at the quantum level, essentially for modeling and simulation of really complex material systems. So hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that.
Wonderful. So thank you. So I'd like to discuss two things. So the first is all the collaborations that have been going on between the three of you, and then I would like to turn to why Connecticut is such a unique place. And I know a lot of this was discussed in the previous panel, and so I don't want to repeat that, but I would like Al to give us perspective afterwards. So to begin, so this is for Victor and Elisa. So can you tell us about the collaboration that Yale Medical and Nvidia has been working on?
As I mentioned, our mission, the quantum algorithm engineering team at Nvidia, is to enable the best scientists to do needle-moving research that is not possible without accelerated computing. And of course, Victor Batista and his team are one of the leaders in the field, working in chemistry, of course, in drug discovery. So we, in particular, had two projects where we combined. So we worked on a hybrid algorithm, and we defined the quantum transformer architecture. So this is very similar to the transformer that is the base of GPT and all of the other language models that we use already, all of us. But with him and his team, we basically explored whether quantum computers can provide some benefit to that model, and in particular when it comes to generating small molecules. It was a great collaboration. We found some really interesting results, and why we partnered with him is because they definitely have the knowledge and the expertise in the domain, in the application, while what we brought to the table was expertise in accelerated computing, in parallelizing calculations, and achieving very large-scale simulations that are not possible on a single computer, but basically bringing the large scale into the game.
Yeah, and from our point of view, what I mentioned about everything we've seen in AI due to GPUs, what I meant is GPUs provided by Nvidia, which have the state-of-the-art technology and has enabled this technological revolution. So something that Nvidia is offering, which is a near-term project on the interface between classical and quantum, is to provide highly efficient simulators of quantum computers. So basically, how to simulate a quantum circuit and the transformations necessary for a calculation on a quantum computer, but simulated on a classical computers using GPUs. And that's what we've been working on closely with Elica and her group on the demonstration of new algorithms, in particular the quantum transformer that Elica just mentioned, which is the basis of what is called the attention mechanism of ChatGPT. So what ChatGPT does is looks into the context of the input that one provides as an input, and then provides an output that is not just informed by the individual tokens that are provided, but also by the context of that sentence. That mechanism requires what is called a dot product. And that dot product can be made exponentially faster on a quantum computer. So what we have done is to implement a hybrid quantum classical algorithm that implements a self-attention process with GPUs at a scale that is unachievable with conventional high-performance computing facilities.
Do you have any idea when the first practical applications from this type of collaboration?
Yeah, well, in terms of simulations, we already have practical applications. So now we are exploring the design of new vaccines based on messenger RNA technology, where we have to encode the best possible representation of proteins in terms of codons that are stable and prevent hydrolysis of the vaccine. So I can have messenger RNA technology stable at room temperature. So that is one of the immediate applications I will mention in a feature article that we just published with Nvidia.
And did you run any of this on an actual quantum computer?
And simulators, yes.
Simulators. And
we also did.
What was the name of the hardware that you ran it on?
So it was quantum processing units that Nvidia makes available. Also, we had a paper with Pfizer, with Matthew Martin and his group, where we addressed the problem of characterization of toxicity of molecules and the re-engineering, reformulation of molecules with reduced toxicity. And that is, we did a classical implementation, but the technology we developed with Nvidia now can be integrated into that earlier development with Pfizer.
Matt, that's a great segue, yeah. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, and I can take a step back because one thing I really want to highlight, especially with the panel with Dr. Green here and Dr. Batista, is the opportunity to get access to really talented graduate students. So even if some of the real world applications in drug discovery for quantum are, on the horizon, we're already seeing kind of the fruits of these collaborations. Your A, B, C, I think we're already into C, having nice collaborations and identifying some use cases that we can bridge, kind of going from classical machine learning and then, exploring the quantum space. So specific to the toxicity modeling, so there's a particular target called hERG, which is basically the potassium channel. So it's a really key thing. And one of the most actionable things in the safety space, where you basically almost always want to avoid being a hERG channel blocker, and because of the cardiotoxicity risk. And it's also something where you have an in vitro assay where you can generate millions of compounds or hundreds of thousands of compounds in an in vitro system, and generate mass amounts of data where the connection between what's happening in this cheap in vitro system to what would happen in a patient translates about as good as any safety direct connection there is. So it's really ripe for modeling in the computational chemistry space, because the amount of data and the actionability of these endpoints. And so I think it's a great example where you're trying to stack sort of the use cases and the actionability of it with the technology. And so Gregory Kiro was an all-star graduate student who, before we even came on as a sort of a summer intern, we already started the collaboration, did all of the public-facing work before the summer internship, and then basically when he was able to join us sort of officially as Pfizer, he was able to basically retrain these models in-house on our internal hERG data as just an example. We also did some other really interesting work. And the public-facing data is what we end up publishing on, just because basically all the architecture and everything was the same. So really fruitful on multiple levels, and really interesting. I think maybe one last thing to highlight is the challenge internally on the re-engineering side of trying to get chemists to use some of these tools. And I do think speed is going to be one really big factor. So I don't have all the answers on this, but I think quantum will be one of those places where speeding up key processes, even things that might have taken a day on a GPU, going down to minutes or something like that, would make all the difference between something getting used and not used in pharma because of the cycle time and especially in the early discovery space.
So one thing that you've implicitly mentioned, but not explicitly, that I think everyone should know about is it's clear that quantum is not going to replace normal computing. And I think that's something that's not always mentioned explicitly, is that it's always going to be a hybrid model. Maybe you can say something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We are not even going to notice a difference, you see, because we're still going to be using the same type of computers, but with internal capabilities that make use of quantum coprocessors. And it's going to be gradual. It's not going to drop, the current computers and now use quantum. But we will be able to perform calculations, simulations, and predictions that would be unthinkable today.
Yes, I fully agree. And they will always work together. So CPUs, GPUs, and QPUs in one heterogeneous system. And in fact, we need the classical compute for the quantum to operate because quantum computers are very sensitive, of course, to the environment. So the errors that they suffer are at a much higher rate than the classical computers. So one of the big challenges of actually building large-scale computers, quantum ones, is error correction. And to do error correction in real time requires huge amount of classical compute. So we would need classical computers for the actual operation of quantum computers. And this is one example. Another example is also for pre-processing. So we would always need to do some kind of a dimensionality reduction of the problem to just execute only the hardest parts of the computational problem on a quantum device, while the rest will continue to run on a classical infrastructure. Another example is also post-processing. So quantum computers are, when you measure the output, it's probabilistic. So what it means is that you need to reproduce many, many times the same experiment, the same calculation, in order to gain statistics, to gather statistics of the output. So you would know what actually the output was. So for that, it usually ends up requiring a lot of classical post-processing. So there are many, many ways that actually classical computers are needed to operate and to enable quantum computers as well. And of course, parts of these problems, the very challenging ones that take exponential amount of time on classical computers, will be achievable in polynomial time on quantum.
So Albert, in the previous panel, you talked about all of the strengths of Connecticut for the quantum ecosystem. Maybe you could say a few words about the strengths of Connecticut specifically to drug discovery and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, so, one of the things that we have going for us here is, I think as I mentioned in the last panel, is that we have close proximity the thought leaders with the ones that are bringing the problems that need to be solved. And Connecticut has a huge pharma and drug discovery infrastructure. And so the problems that you're addressing are real world problems that are companies that exist in Connecticut that we are addressing. That's a part of the ecosystem that we're trying to build.
So the audience here is a very eclectic mix of academics and people from industry and investors and policymakers and such. What would each of you need from them to help you with your future efforts?
Well, number one is guidance in terms of their needs, because that can drive our priorities. And second is integration of our efforts with theirs, so that we create the ecosystem that we all trying to establish with UConn and Yale and the private sector.
I'd say patience, maybe, because still quantum computing, because I did used to work in pharma, so I know it's very difficult when you go to a computational chemist and you tell them about the great potential of quantum computing, but it will be available, let's say, in 5 years at that scale, or maybe even more. So usually industry, let's say, gives up faster than that. So I would say really kind of patience and understanding that this technology is in fact transformative. It will bring a lot of value to many industries, but it will take still a little bit of time until we are at the scale for very useful, practical industry applications.
Yeah, I'd piggyback on that. I think some patience, and I joke that I'm not a people manager, I'm an expectation manager, even just in the AI space, because of, you see the news on AI and how it's transforming so many things, but then there are some practical challenges in the drug discovery space, including just the regulatory requirements that you just can't overcome just magically with AI, and that's just say the least. So I think patience and expectation management, and I think that it will actually have better staying power, and try to blunt some of that the hype cycle that often happens with new technologies.
So,
and that this is really transformative technology that needs to support to get developed. So unless we get support, it will not happen in the time scale that we need them.
Sure. So for drug development and drug discovery, right now it sounds like you're trying to kind of do things which are already being done but faster and more efficient, but there are ideas that using quantum computing we could even do personalized medicine, which would be really impossible today. Can you say a few words about that? Like being able to develop a drug just for one individual based on their genetics to treat their medical condition?
Sure. Yeah, the same technologies that are being developed for classical computer modeling of those problems can be easily mapped and represented on quantum devices. So even with very small quantum devices, like the type of 3D quantum electrodynamic technology that quantum circuits has. And therefore, instead of thinking about weights of classical models, now becomes angles and phases of pulses that are being applied to that processor. So there's an easy way of mapping the problem into a quantum device and then achieve the efficiency of that huge Hilbert space representation that the quantum device offers that the classical model doesn't have.
Yeah, maybe just something to add is, and this is maybe on us in the pharma, is getting our own house in order a little bit on the data side, because ultimately I think what you're going to need is a lot of really good quality data, much like classical methods, and I still see a lot of challenges in clinical trial data access, even internally, let alone to do things really at scale. Data collection, so personalized medicine, getting access to genomes and things like that, all play a role. So I think that's where there'll be hopefully a nice convergence of the technology and some of the more rudimentary things that we're still working on improving.
Yeah, I think your point that you were making was about adjacent applications, say in personalized medicine, is really exciting for us. I mean, from an ecosystem perspective, what we're trying to do is to engineer as many collisions as we possibly can, because innovations happen at the boundaries. And so the thing, as a deep tech physicist myself, I mean, the tools and techniques that they are discussing is broadly applicable. And so, the answer to what we can get from you all is that, there are problems that can be addressed in adjacent areas that can directly build off of the work that they're doing. And so, again, from an ecosystem perspective, what we're trying to do is to bring as many of those ideas in the same room, if you will, so those discussions occur and lead to new and more exciting and equally exciting breakthroughs using some of the tools and the techniques that we're developing here.
Good. So before we turn to questions from the audience, is there anything that you'd like to add about exciting things that we can look forward to coming up soon?
Well, again, in the three main areas where we expect to have the largest impact are simulations, quantum optimization, and quantum machine learning. And those three areas, address many of the needs of pharma and the defense industry with whom we are collaborating, and many other applications that require efficient optimization, quantum machine learning, and simulations. So, and that's where high-performance computing has already been addressing as the main applications of classical computing. So that's and require intense usage of processors that if you have a quantum processor online that you can have access through, then you will be able to achieve results that will be unachievable with conventional computing.
I would like to touch upon the possibility of AI enabling quantum computing. So there is a very close pollination between AI and quantum computing. There are, of course, ways that quantum can also let's say, improve AI with quantum machine learning and a few other ideas. But the more closer near-term application will be actually of AI for quantum computing. And this also extends in the applications area. And one of the spaces where AI can really make a difference very soon is for synthetic data generation. Quantum computers are very expensive. They are very rare to find. So getting enough data from them in order to train an AI model to make a prediction on something or to generate a more efficient circuit for simulation or for the control of the actual QPU is very hard. So we can use, and we do use in some of our projects, AI to generate synthetic data, to train an AI model on that after that predicts the behavior of quantum computers. So I think that this is something very exciting that we'll see results in that space very soon.
It's worth mentioning that Nvidia is so invested in quantum that they're setting up a quantum center in a state adjacent to Connecticut.
To the
Nearby.
north.
To the north.
In Boston. Yeah, so we have just recently announced that in March that Nvidia is launching an accelerated quantum computing center in Massachusetts, in Boston, Massachusetts. And the reason and the motivation for that center is really to have a very substantial compute resource. We'll have 576 Grace Blackwell GPUs, which is a very, very top-of-the-line AI system that we will use to solve some of the challenges of building large-scale quantum computers. So we are very excited about that.
Good. So I think we'll turn to the audience for any questions now. And I see one person. I'll just come over here then.
Thank you. I'm still very much getting up to speed on this space, so appreciate your time today. A question for the professor. You mentioned with the mRNA, you were using a simulation rather than actual quantum computer. And when do you choose to do simulations versus using real quantum computers, and what are the trade-offs?
Yeah, so the simulators we've been using are simulators of qubit-based computers like the IBM or Rigetti computers. The particular way of simulating them is based on tensor networks that basically are approximations of the quantum circuit that we are actually running. And so with those representations of the quantum state, we are able to simulate the representation of these sequences of messenger RNA vaccines that need to be optimized in order to come up with formulations that are thermally stable at room temperature. So basically, the only thing that would change when we're running on the actual computer is that the representation of that quantum state would not rely on a low-rank approximation, on that approximation that the system is sufficiently simple as to be represented with fewer parameters. So that's basically the code is exactly the same. It's the same Python code that you will run on the quantum computer, but it operates on a classical computer with that approximation on the representation.
Do you do it for cost reasons or
for cost reasons, yeah. So basically, if we had to run it on the IBM computer, it would be significantly more expensive than with a simulator. And the nice thing is that for the process of optimization, you can put up with that approximation and still get the correct answers. So you don't need to have a very pure quantum state.
I would like to add something, and of course the difference between the simulator and an actual QPU is the noise. So in a QPU you have a noise. So if you are very much interested to test an algorithm, you can do in simulation, so perfect state vector simulator 40. The total limit that you can do on any, like the largest supercomputer in the world, would be about 53 qubits, maybe 54. So this is the largest, let's say, memory that you can fit, 53 qubits on a supercomputer. And this will be perfect. So this kind of simulation will be exactly like if you have a perfect error-corrected quantum computer with a 53 qubits. So anything up to that, you, on the algorithmic point of view, up to 50-something qubits, from algorithmic point of view, you get better performance from a simulator than actually running on a QPU because the simulator doesn't have noise. Now, we do have QPUs that are going beyond that number. And then, of course, the simulators with tensor network backend, that's also able to go beyond 50 qubits. So then it becomes kind of a trade-off, also what you want to do. Are you more interested in the QPU, kind of understanding the physics of it, or you are more interested in the applications, what you choose, whether to use QPUs or simulators?
Good. I see a question in the back. Yes?
Hi. It's great to hear this talk and just to have a little bit of inside knowledge, so I just want to acknowledge that. But one of the things I've appreciated about this talk is the kind of the mutual excitement that I've heard from this collaboration. And I think particularly for the folks in this audience, this is very unique to have Quantinuum, have Pfizer, have Nvidia, have a Yale faculty member engaging in a collaboration like this. I'd love it if you could share a little bit about what makes this collaboration work, because we'd like to do more of these. And so I think I'd love to hear you share with this group what is really the secret sauce that's making this work so well.
From my perspective, the secret sauce are the students and their interest to participate in something that is transformative, that is new, and is the future. So last summer, one of my students was an intern at Pfizer, and now this summer another student is following the same steps, and a third student has had an extended collaboration throughout the last year with Nvidia, with weekly meetings and very close collaboration, actually two other students. So they are the driving force, and they are what bring value to this project that enable our ideas to become alive and successful.
So I just want to add to that. I mean, the last panel was really about, again, ecosystem, and we talked a lot about the importance of workforce. And so this is the example of it. I mean, that you know, the end users want to be at a place where they have access to students that can do the work under you, Victor, but then also might come and work for you or you. You know, and that's one of the big parts of the ecosystem that we're trying to develop, is to try to develop the workforce. And also, you know, as quantum computing and quantum technology in general becomes more mainstream, you know, you're going to want to hire people that will be developing other new applications and new ways to do things. And so having the ecosystem that can put out those kinds of students and those kind of workers at existing companies and also from the universities is critical.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. I think I saw your hand first. Yeah, you.
Hey, thank you for the time. I'm a graduate student, rising second year in pharmacology. So I do more of like in the wet lab research, and I do like molecular dynamic simulations or like molecular docking. So we do utilize a lot of those computational tools, but as like a student in bio, like we're not computational like experts, but I'm like very optimistic about this quantum technology being integrated into this field. So I'm expecting like by the time I graduate or like a couple of years after that, maybe it's gonna be, you know, more available for like researchers like us. But so in that case, do you think it will be important for us to understand the quantum technology better? And like, if so, like what will we have to like, you know, study, just like, you know, how AI is really being like employed everywhere, and it's become really important for us to understand like the data science and the statistics behind them?
Yeah, familiarizing yourself with quantum certainly would not hurt. But from the perspective of, you know, having to take classes or, you know, having to go out of your way in seeking that information, I don't think at the moment that is necessary, because there is so much online, so many tutorials, so many excellent resources that you can start from scratch and build your way up in understanding and application of each of these models one by one. For instance, I have my class in quantum machine learning and quantum computing and machine learning online with all the tutorials available for you to download, and then you have Penny Lane, and you have many other resources, all the resources that Quantinuum makes available. So nowadays is a fantastic time to be a student because.
I would say also that, you know, there are many ways that a person will be able to participate in the quantum economy. I mean, so, you know, if you sort of rewind to the 50s when transistors were first invented at Bell Labs, I mean, you know, you really had to, it was very beneficial to understand how a field effect transistor or a metal oxide semiconductor or something like that worked at the basic level. And after that, you know, you learned the initial programming was in machine language, you know, and, you know, fast forward to today, and the people that participate in the modern economy, they have no clue about how a transistor operates. Well, at least most won't and don't need to. And I think that over time, the same thing will happen as this economy matures. So certainly, it's great depending on what level of this breakthroughs you want to participate in. But you know, I think the message should go out that there are many, many ways to participate, you know, in the ecosystem, even, you know, for drug discovery topics and so on.
Good. So I think we will call it a day for this, but let's thank our panelists once again. And thank you all so much for coming. Next year, I expect there will be 3 quantum panels, so I look forward to seeing you then.